In the darkest hours of World War II, beneath the tumultuous waves of the Atlantic, an unseen war raged. The fate of nations hung in the balance, hinging on the courage and strategy of a few brave souls aboard the USS Warden. Lieutenant John Avery, a young officer, finds himself thrust into this treacherous game of cat and mouse, where the hunter and the hunted can swiftly change roles. As the Warden cuts through the deceptive calm of the ocean, Avery and his crew face the relentless threat of German U-boats, each encounter more perilous than the last. In a world where a single misstep could spell disaster, they navigate not only the physical dangers of war, but also the moral quandaries that come with it. Join Avery in a gripping journey of valor, camaraderie, and survival, where every decision could alter the course of history. The Atlantic awaits, its depths hiding secrets and strategies in a battle where the line between predator and prey blurs. Welcome aboard the USS Warden, the front line of the Battle of the Atlantic. Lieutenant John Avery stood at the bustling docks of Norfolk, Virginia, his eyes fixed on the gray silhouette of the USS Warden, a Fletcher-class destroyer moored and ready for voyage. The early morning mist rolled off the Atlantic, carrying the salty tang of the sea, a scent Avery had come to associate with both adventure and trepidation. Today marked the beginning of his journey into the heart of the Battle of the Atlantic, a crucial and perilous theater of World War II. As a young boy growing up in a small coastal town in Maine, Avery had always been drawn to the sea. The tales of mariners and naval heroes recounted by his grandfather, a veteran of the First World War, had instilled in him a deep sense of duty and a longing to follow in those storied footsteps. Now, standing in his crisp uniform adorned with a lieutenant's bars, Avery felt the weight of that legacy upon his shoulders. "Exciting, isn't it, Lieutenant?" came a voice from behind. Avery turned to see Chief Petty Officer Michael Donovan, a seasoned sailor with a weathered face and a reassuring grin. Donovan's presence was a comfort. He was the kind of sailor who knew the ins and outs of life at sea, a mentor to the younger crew and a trusted advisor to the officers. "It is, Chief," Avery replied, his gaze returning to the USS Warden. "Feels like we're on the brink of something significant." "We are," Donovan said, following Avery's gaze. "These convoys are the lifeline of the Allies. We get these supplies across, and we're one step closer to winning this war." The USS Warden was part of a convoy set to cross the treacherous Atlantic, braving the threat of German U-boats to deliver essential supplies to the Allied forces in Europe. The importance of their mission was not lost on Avery. The success of the convoy was vital, not only for the war effort but also for the morale of the troops and civilians who depended on these supplies. As they boarded the ship, the bustle of activity engulfed them. Sailors hurried across the deck securing cargo, running checks on equipment and shouting orders. Avery was struck by the abundance of resources and the meticulous organization that went into preparing for their departure. Crates of ammunition, medical supplies, and food were being carefully stowed away, a testament to the American industrial might that had turned the tide of war logistics. Commander Robert Wallace, the captain of the USS Warden, stood on the bridge, a figure of authority and experience. His eyes met Avery's, and he gave a slight nod in acknowledgement. Wallace was a leader who had seen the best and worst of the sea, and his presence instilled confidence in his crew. Avery made his way to his quarters, a small but functional space he would call home for the duration of the crossing. As he unpacked his belongings, his mind raced with thoughts of the journey ahead. The Atlantic was a battlefield as unpredictable and unforgiving as any land front. The menace of the U-boats, the harsh weather conditions, and the responsibility of safeguarding the convoy weighed heavily on him. Yet, amidst these concerns, Avery felt a surge of resolve. This was his duty, his contribution to a cause much greater than himself. He was here to ensure that the abundance of American resources reached those who needed them most, playing his part in the intricate machinery of war. As the USS Warden sounded its horn, signaling their imminent departure, Lieutenant John Avery stepped out onto the deck. The sun had begun its ascent, casting a golden glow over the waters. The sea called, and he was ready to answer. The journey had begun. The USS Warden cut through the Atlantic's choppy waters, leading the convoy with steadfast determination. Lieutenant John Avery stood on the deck, his eyes scanning the horizon. The vastness of the ocean was both awe-inspiring and daunting. He knew that beneath the seemingly endless blue waves lurked a deadly threat: German U-boats, the unseen predators of the deep. As days turned into nights and back into days, the routine aboard the Warden became a mix of vigilance and normalcy. Avery spent hours on the bridge with Commander Wallace, learning the intricacies of naval warfare and convoy tactics. The men spoke little, but their shared purpose forged a bond stronger than words. Chief Petty Officer Donovan was always nearby, his seasoned insights invaluable. "Remember, Lieutenant," he would often say, "the ocean is a fickle mistress. Respect her, and she'll see us through." The convoy had been lucky so far. They had encountered rough seas and a few false alarms, but the real enemy remained elusive. The tension, however, was palpable. Every sailor knew that a U-boat strike could come at any moment without warning. One evening, as a thick fog enveloped the convoy, the dreaded moment arrived. The shrill sound of the alarm pierced the calm, sending the crew into immediate action. Avery's heart raced as he rushed to the bridge. "Contact bearing 215 degrees, distance 2 miles, reported the sonar operator, his voice tense but controlled. Commander Wallace's eyes were fixed on the radar screen. "All hands to battle stations. Prepare for anti-submarine maneuvers," he ordered calmly. The Warden sprang to life. The crew, trained for this very scenario, moved with precision. Depth charges were armed, the anti-aircraft guns manned, and the ship zigzagged to evade the unseen assailant. Avery, now at his battle station, felt a surge of adrenaline. He was no longer an observer, but an active participant in this deadly dance. The fog made visual identification impossible, so they relied solely on their instruments and instincts. Then, without warning, a torpedo's white trail cut through the water, narrowly missing the Warden's stern. The realization that death had brushed past them so closely sent a chill down Avery's spine. "Hard to starboard! Drop depth charges," Wallace commanded. The Warden obeyed, turning sharply as the depth charges were released into the ocean. The resulting explosion sent shock waves through the ship, a forceful reminder of the battle's stakes. For hours, the Warden and its unseen adversary played this dangerous game. Avery felt each minute stretch into eternity. The tension was broken only by the occasional order or status report. Finally, as the first light of dawn broke through the fog, the sonar operator gave a report that eased every heart aboard. "Contact lost, sir. No further readings." The crew let out a collective sigh of relief. They had survived their first encounter with the enemy, but the victory was not without cost. The men were visibly shaken, the reality of their situation sinking in. Commander Wallace addressed the crew, his voice steady and reassuring. "You all performed admirably. This is what we trained for, and this is what we'll continue to do. We protect this convoy and each other no matter what the sea throws at us." Avery felt a newfound respect for the commander and his crew. They were not just sailors. They were guardians of a lifeline that stretched across the ocean, vital for the war effort. As the convoy resumed its course, the sun fully emerged, casting a golden light over the waters. The beauty of the scene was a stark contrast to the night's events. Avery knew this was only the beginning. The Atlantic had shown its fury, and the threat of the U-boats was ever present. But he also knew they were ready. The USS Warden and her crew were prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead, united by their duty and resilience. The Battle of the Atlantic raged on, and they were at its forefront. Days after their first engagement with a U-boat, the USS Warden and the convoy continued their vigilant journey across the Atlantic. The crew had settled into a tense routine, each man acutely aware of the constant danger lurking beneath the waves. Lieutenant John Avery, now more seasoned, had grown into his role, his initial apprehension replaced by a focused determination. The Atlantic, in its vastness, offered both a sense of isolation and a deceptive calm. The endless expanse of water around them was a reminder of their smallness in the face of nature and war. Avery often found himself lost in thought, staring into the depths, pondering the silent battles fought in these waters. One quiet afternoon, as a gentle breeze skimmed the surface of the sea, the peace was shattered. The sonar operator, a young seaman named Collins, called out with urgency, "Sir, new contact. Bearing 310 degrees, closing in fast." Commander Wallace, who had been conferring with his officers, moved swiftly to the sonar station. The crew tensed, sensing the immediacy of the threat. Avery joined Wallace, his eyes on the sonar screen, which displayed the ominous blip of the enemy submarine. "Sound general quarters. Let's not take any chances," Wallace ordered, his voice calm but firm. As the alarm sounded, the crew sprang into action. Avery knew the drill. The entire ship transformed into a machine of war within moments. The anti-submarine weapons were manned, and the ship began evasive maneuvers, zigzagging across the ocean to throw off the U-boat's targeting. The hours that followed were a tense game of cat and mouse. The Warden and the U-boat circled each other, each waiting for an opportunity to strike. Avery felt the weight of the moment. A single mistake could mean disaster. Suddenly, the sonar operator shouted, "Torpedo in the water, starboard side." Commander Wallace reacted instantly. "Hard to port. Increase speed. Ready, the depth charges." The Warden lurched as it veered away from the torpedo's path. Avery held onto a railing, his heart pounding. He watched as the torpedo passed harmlessly by, disappearing into the depths. "Depth charges away," called out the chief gunner. The explosions reverberated through the ship, a stark reminder of the lethal game they were playing. Avery watched the ocean's surface, half expecting to see the U-boat emerge. But there was nothing. The U-boat had slipped away into the depths, its presence now only a ghost on the sonar screen. The tension slowly lifted from the ship, but the sense of unease remained. They had survived another encounter, but the threat was far from over. The U-boat had been a silent predator, a shadow in the deep, and its escape was a warning. The enemy was out there, patient and dangerous. As night fell, Avery stood on the deck, looking out into the darkness. The stars above were a stark contrast to the darkness below, a reminder of the dual nature of their journey, beauty and danger intertwined. Commander Wallace joined him, his gaze also on the horizon. "We'll see more of them, Avery, but we'll be ready. We have to be." Avery nodded, his resolve strengthened. The Battle of the Atlantic was not just a battle of ships and torpedoes, but a battle of wits and endurance. He was no longer just a participant. He was a defender of the convoy, a guardian against the silent predators of the deep. The journey continued, the USS Warden and her convoy pushing forward through the vast, unpredictable Atlantic, their vigilance unwavering. The convoy, a lifeline across the Atlantic, plowed forward under the vigilant watch of the USS Warden and her crew. Days since their last encounter with a U-boat had brought a deceptive calm, punctuated only by the rhythmic churn of the ship's engines and the ceaseless wind. Lieutenant John Avery, now more attuned to the nuances of this maritime chess game, stood on the deck, his eyes scanning the endless blue. A sense of unease hung in the air, a prelude to the storm they all knew was brewing. Commander Robert Wallace, a seasoned captain whose instincts were honed by years at sea, shared Avery's vigilance. "Stay sharp," he would often remind his crew. "The sea hides her secrets well." Their fears materialized one fateful morning when the lookout spotted plumes of water, the unmistakable sign of torpedoes. The alarm blared, jolting the crew into action. Avery's heart raced as he sprinted to his battle station, knowing that this was no mere skirmish but a full-scale assault. "Multiple contacts! It's a wolf pack!" shouted the sonar operator, his voice tense with urgency. The convoy was under attack by a group of U-boats, a coordinated strike designed to overwhelm and decimate. The Warden's guns roared to life, her crew working feverishly to defend the vulnerable merchant ships. Avery, positioned at an anti-aircraft gun, felt each explosion reverberate through his body, a stark reminder of the ferocity of the battle. The sea around them erupted in chaos. Torpedoes sliced through the water, seeking their prey, while depth charges plunged into the depths, unleashing their deadly fury. The Warden, agile and fierce, maneuvered through the onslaught, her guns blazing. Amidst the cacophony of battle, a distress signal pierced through. A merchant ship, struck by a torpedo, was sinking rapidly. Avery's heart sank. Those ships carried not only vital supplies but also brave men. Commander Wallace, his face set in grim determination, issued rapid orders. "Provide covering fire. We need to protect the rest of the convoy." The battle raged on, a desperate struggle for survival. The Warden, with her advanced American-supplied weaponry, held the line against the U-boats, her guns and depth charges carving a path of survival for the convoy. But the cost was heavy. When the smoke cleared and the sea calmed, the loss of the merchant ship, along with its crew and cargo, was a somber reminder of the war's brutality. Avery felt a deep sense of grief mixed with anger. These were not just anonymous casualties of war, they were comrades in this shared fight for freedom. The crew gathered to honor the fallen, their heads bowed in a moment of silence. Commander Wallace spoke, his voice resonant with both sorrow and resolve. "We mourn our losses, but we continue our mission. Our resolve is only strengthened by the sacrifices of those who have fallen. We will see this through, for them and for the countless lives depending on us." As the convoy resumed its journey, the sun broke through the clouds, casting a solemn light over the sea. Avery stood at the deck, his gaze lingering on the spot where the merchant ship had sunk. The Battle of the Atlantic was more than a strategic conflict. It was a test of wills, a fight for survival in the face of relentless adversity. The USS Warden, scarred but steadfast, continued her protective watch over the convoy. Each sailor aboard knew the stakes were higher now. They were not just fighting for victory. They were upholding a sacred duty to their fallen brethren and to the free world. The war at sea raged on, but the men of the Warden were united by a bond forged in battle, a commitment to stand as a shield against the Wolfpack's fury. Avery, his resolve hardened, knew that this was but one chapter in their arduous journey. The Atlantic, with its vast, treacherous waters, awaited them, but they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. After the harrowing battle with the Wolfpack, the USS Warden and the remaining ships of the convoy pressed on, navigating the treacherous waters of the Atlantic. The air was thick with the lingering tension of the recent skirmish, but a brief period of calm had settled over the sea, offering the crew a much-needed respite. Lieutenant John Avery found himself on the deck, gazing at the horizon where the sky met the sea in a seamless embrace. The vastness of the ocean, which had once seemed daunting, now brought a sense of serene isolation. It was moments like these, amidst the tranquility of the open sea, that Avery had time to reflect on the enormity of the war and their role in it. Chief Petty Officer Michael Donovan joined him, his experienced eyes scanning the waters. "We're lucky to have a bit of quiet," he remarked. "Gives the men time to breathe." Avery nodded. The crew had been through a relentless trial of nerves and endurance. This lull was a rare opportunity to recover and prepare for the challenges ahead. "It's more than just a physical battle," Avery mused. "It's mental, emotional. The sea tests you in every way." "That it does, Lieutenant," Donovan agreed. "But it also teaches you about the world, about yourself." The conversation turned to the men who had been lost in the recent engagement. Each had a story, a family, dreams left unfulfilled. Avery felt a deep sense of responsibility for their well-being, a commitment that extended beyond strategic maneuvers and naval tactics. The night brought a clear sky, and the deck of the Warden transformed into a makeshift gathering place. The crew, a tight-knit group bonded by shared experiences, exchanged stories and thoughts, laughter mixed with solemn words, creating a tapestry of camaraderie and mutual respect. Avery, sitting among them, listened and contributed, understanding more about the lives and hopes of his fellow sailors. It wasn't just about fighting a war, it was about protecting each other, being a family away from home. Commander Wallace joined them, his presence a reminder of the unified purpose they shared. He spoke not as a commanding officer, but as one of them, sharing his own experiences and insights. It was a moment of collective strength, a reaffirmation of their commitment to their mission and to each other. As the gathering dispersed, Avery remained on deck, the silence of the night enveloping him. The stars above shone brightly, each a distant beacon in the vast universe. He thought about the journey ahead, the challenges they would face, and the resilience they had shown. The war was more than a series of battles. It was a test of human spirit and resolve. Avery realized that their mission was not just about delivering supplies. It was about delivering hope, sustaining the fight for freedom across the globe. With a renewed sense of purpose, Avery knew that no matter what the Atlantic had in store for them, they would face it together. The USS Warden, a guardian of the seas, continued her vigilant watch, her crew united and ready for whatever lay ahead. The journey was far from over, but they were prepared to meet it with courage and determination. The USS Warden and the Atlantic convoy continued their perilous journey, steaming ahead under the watchful eyes of Lieutenant John Avery and his crewmates. The recent skirmishes with German U-boats had heightened their awareness of the vital importance of their mission. Each ship in the convoy, from the robust Navy destroyers to the lumbering merchant vessels, was a crucial link in the chain that connected the war-torn front lines with the industrial might of America. As the sun rose over the Atlantic, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Avery stood on the bridge alongside Commander Wallace, observing the convoy. The array of ships, with their precious cargo of supplies and equipment, was a testament to the industrial capacity of the United States, a nation that had rapidly transformed itself into the arsenal of democracy. "The sheer scale of this operation is something, isn't it?" Avery remarked, his eyes tracing the line of ships stretching toward the horizon. "It's the lifeblood of the Allied forces," Wallace responded, his gaze steady on the waters ahead. "Every ship here carries more than just supplies. They carry hope, the promise of continued resistance against tyranny." As the day progressed, Avery took a tour of the Warden, inspecting the ship's vital systems and ensuring their readiness. In the engine room, The roar of turbines and the heat of boilers spoke of the ship's raw power and the meticulous maintenance it required. Here, he met with Petty Officer Thomas Bennett, the ship's chief engineer. "Everything's running smooth, Lieutenant," Bennett reported, "but I'll tell you, the spare parts we got from the States have been a godsend. We can patch up almost anything that goes wrong." Avery nodded, understanding the critical role logistics played in their mission. The abundance of American resources was not just about weapons and ammunition. It was also about the less glamorous but equally essential parts that kept their engines running and guns firing. Later, as Avery walked along the deck, he observed the crew performing their duties with a sense of purpose and efficiency. The resilience and adaptability they displayed were as crucial as the material resources they carried. Each man, from the seasoned officers to the greenest sailors, was a cog in the vast machinery of the war effort. That evening, as the convoy sailed under a canopy of stars, Avery joined a group of sailors sharing stories of home. The conversation was a mix of nostalgia and longing, a brief escape from the realities of war. It was in these moments that Avery was reminded of the human element of their mission, the personal sacrifices made in the name of freedom. The night passed with the convoy remaining vigilant, ever aware of the lurking threat of enemy submarines. But for now, the sea was calm and their path was clear. As dawn approached, Avery stood once more on the bridge, looking out at the convoy. He felt a deep sense of pride and responsibility. They were more than just a fleet of ships crossing an ocean. They were a symbol of unity and strength, a tangible connection between the home front and the front lines. The journey ahead was fraught with danger, but Avery knew that the Warden and her convoy were ready to face any challenge. They were the lifeline of the Allies, a moving testament to the resolve and capability of a nation united in a common cause. The Battle of the Atlantic was far from over, but they were prepared to continue their vital mission, delivering the abundance of American resources to those who needed them most. The days following were marked by an eerie calm that settled over the Atlantic, a deceptive quiet that Lieutenant John Avery knew all too well could be shattered in a moment's notice. The USS Warden and the convoy continued their vigilant trek, the ocean's vastness offering both a sense of isolation and a canvas for potential threats. Commander Wallace called Avery to the bridge for a briefing with the senior officers. The atmosphere was tense, the weight of responsibility evident in each man's demeanor. "We've received intelligence of a possible U-boat pack operating in our path," Wallace began, his eyes scanning the room. "We have a plan to draw them out and engage." Avery listened intently as Wallace outlined the strategy. They would use a smaller group of ships, including the Warden, as bait to lure the U-boats into an area where the rest of the convoy could circle around and trap them. It was a bold maneuver, one that carried significant risk but offered the chance to eliminate a substantial threat. The crew was briefed, and the Warden, along with two other destroyers, detached from the main convoy to begin the gambit. Avery felt the familiar surge of adrenaline as he took his position. The sea around them seemed to mirror their tension, the waves choppy and the wind brisk. Hours passed with no sign of the enemy. The crew remained on high alert, the anticipation building. Then, just as the sun began to set, casting a fiery glow over the water, the sonar operator reported contact. "Multiple submarines bearing 150 degrees. The trap was sprung. The Warden and her companion destroyers moved into action, racing towards the enemy's last known position. Avery manned the artillery, his focus absolute as they prepared for the confrontation. The U-boats, realizing they had been lured into a trap, reacted swiftly. Torpedoes cut through the water towards the Warden, their deadly intent clear. Avery's heart pounded as he watched the torpedoes' trails, each one a potential harbinger of destruction. "Evasive maneuvers. Return fire," Wallace commanded. The Warden swerved violently, narrowly avoiding a torpedo as it passed by. The ship's guns thundered in response, sending shells towards the estimated locations of the submarines. The sea erupted in explosions, water and fire mingling in a deadly dance. Then, a stroke of luck. One of the Warden's shells found its mark, confirmed by a sudden eruption of water and debris. Cheers broke out on the deck, a momentary release in the midst of chaos. But the battle was not over. The U-boats, undeterred, continued their assault. Avery and his crewmates fought with a combination of fear and determination, each aware that their lives and the success of their mission hung in the balance. As night fell, the engagement reached its climax. The Warden, aided by her fellow destroyers and now reinforced by the returning convoy, cornered the remaining U-boats. The final moments were a frenzy of gunfire and depth charges, the ocean's surface alight with the flames of battle. When the silence finally settled, it was clear that they had won. The U-boat pack had been decimated, a significant blow to the enemy's efforts in the Atlantic. Exhausted but victorious, the crew of the Warden took stock of their situation. They had sustained damage, but it was repairable. More importantly, they had survived and protected the convoy. Commander Wallace addressed his crew, his voice filled with a mix of pride and solemnity. "You have all performed beyond the call of duty. Today, we struck a blow against the enemy that will resonate. But remember, our mission is far from over. We sail on, ever vigilant, ever ready." Avery stood on the deck, looking out at the dark waters. They had faced the enemy and emerged victorious, but the cost of war was always present in his mind. They were sailors and soldiers, fighting not just for victory, but for the hope of a peaceful world. The convoy regrouped and continued its journey, the Warden once again taking her place as its guardian. The battle was over, but the war raged on. Avery knew there would be more challenges ahead, but he also knew that he and his crewmates were ready to face them, united in their duty and resolve. The dawn broke with a serene calm over the Atlantic, a stark contrast to the tumultuous events of the previous day. The convoy, now significantly closer to its destination, moved steadily forward, the USS Warden leading with a quiet determination. Lieutenant John Avery, standing on the deck, watched the sunrise, its rays painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The beauty of the moment was not lost on him, a brief respite in the relentless cycle of war. The victory against the U-boat pack had bolstered the spirits of the crew, but it had also left a deep imprint of the realities of their mission. Avery felt a mix of pride and solemnity. They had succeeded in their task, yet the ocean had claimed more lives, each a reminder of the war's unforgiving nature. As the convoy approached the British coast, the sense of relief was palpable. The Warden had escorted the ships through one of the war's most dangerous passages, delivering the crucial supplies that would bolster the Allied effort. Avery watched as the crew prepared for their arrival, the anticipation of setting foot on land again, evident in their hurried movements and lively chatter. Commander Wallace, standing beside Avery, looked out at the convoy with a sense of satisfaction. "We've done our part, Lieutenant. These supplies will make a difference on the front lines. It's a job well done." Avery nodded, his thoughts turning to the journey they had completed. "It's been an honor, sir. I've learned a lot under your command." "The honor is mine, Avery. You've proven yourself more than capable. Remember, this war is a series of challenges, and each one teaches us something new." As the Warden docked, the crew disembarked, each man carrying the experiences of their journey. Avery stepped onto the dock, feeling the solid ground beneath his feet. He took a moment to look back at the ship, a silent guardian now at rest. The days that followed were a flurry of activity. The supplies were unloaded, the Warden was refitted and repaired, and the crew was given some well-deserved shore leave. Avery used this time to reflect, to write letters home, and to connect with his fellow sailors, sharing stories and strengthening bonds. But the respite was short-lived. The war continued, and the call of duty was ever present. Avery and his crewmates knew that they would soon be back at sea, facing new challenges, protecting more convoys. As Avery prepared for their next deployment, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The Battle of the Atlantic was more than a strategic campaign. It was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the strength of unity in the face of adversity. The USS Warden, with her crew ready and determined, set sail once more, her course set for the open sea. Avery stood on the deck looking out at the horizon, understanding that their journey was part of something much larger than themselves. They were not just fighting a war, they were defending a way of life, a future of peace and freedom. The sea beckoned, its mysteries and dangers lurking beneath the waves. But Avery and the crew of the Warden were undaunted. They sailed forward, guardians of the deep, their resolve unbroken, their mission clear. The war awaited, and they were ready to meet it head-on, united in their duty and steadfast in their courage.